I sent the elegy burst every 9th night for 6 years, and for 6 years nothing answered. That should have told me something. Instead, I kept transmitting it the way you keep checking a door is locked, not for a different result, but because checking is the only proof you're still a person who checks things. The burst was simple, a data laser pulse, narrow as a needle, aimed at the relay coordinates the Accord had given every household on Calvasa before the fever came. Speak your name. Speak the names of the dead. Note your coordinates and your air reserve, and whether you still believed anyone was listening. The relay would catch it, hold it, and forward it the next time a courier ship passed close enough to collect the cue. That was the whole system. It worked for 200 years. It worked right up until the fever took the relay crew along with everyone else, and the relay went dark, and my burst had nowhere left to go but straight out into the vacuum, unaddressed, undelivered, aimed at a network that no longer existed. I didn't know that. I want to be honest about that, because everything that happened after depends on the fact that I sent that signal believing someone of my own kind might still be alive to catch it. I was not signaling for rescue from strangers. I was not signaling for rescue from anyone outside the Accord at all. I was recording Joran's name, and Sael's name, and the names of the 11 families on our terrace, into a beam aimed at people who had been dead, by then, for longer than I'd been transmitting to them. The spire kept me fed and warm and honest with myself in ways the rest of the world stopped doing the year the fever finished its work. I cataloged what was left: seed banks, water tables, the dosage logs from the clinic, because someone should, even if no one would ever read it. I told myself the elegy burst was part of that cataloging, a record, not a cry. I have since decided that was not entirely true. Joran used to say, the dish looked like a held-out hand, palm up, asking the sky for something it had no right to expect. He said it the week we installed it, back when the fever was still a rumor from the lowland clinics, and the worst thing either of us had to worry about was whether the terrace's water allotment would survive another council vote. He was wrong about one thing. He thought the hand was asking. I came to understand, somewhere around year 3, that it wasn't asking anymore. It was just open. There's a difference, even if no one outside that tower would ever need to know it. There were nights, especially early on, when I convinced myself the silence after each burst meant the network was simply slow. A courier, queued somewhere behind 100 other elegies, mine waiting its turn. By year 4, I'd stopped pretending. By year 6, the ritual had become its own justification, the way a held breath becomes its own kind of breathing if you hold it long enough. On the morning the ship answered, I almost didn't notice. The spire's dish had been quiet so long that the proximity chime had become background noise, the kind your mind edits out the way it edits out your own breathing. It rang 3 times before I understood it meant anything. By the 4th ring I was at the console, and the readout told me a vessel had matched velocity with my burst's exact bearing, 211 years after I'd first sent it, and was asking, politely, in a clean translated voice with no Accord cipher in it at all, for permission to make planetfall. I asked them how they had received a transmission with no forwarding address, on a frequency abandoned before their own species had left its first orbit. The voice that answered was unhurried. It told me their patrol vessel ran old listening arrays as a maintenance habit more than a tactical one, the kind of equipment nobody budgets to replace because nobody expects it to find anything. It told me the burst had been drifting for 2 centuries on a heading that happened, eventually, to cross theirs. It told me, without any apology in its tone, that I had never been on anyone's distribution list. Their network did not know my network existed. They had not been looking for me. They had simply heard something on an old channel that was supposed to be silent, and a silence that breaks is the kind of thing a patrol ship is built to investigate. I told them there was nothing here to investigate. I told them the fever had taken the Accord's reach in this sector down to one address, and that the address was me, and that I did not believe I qualified as an emergency by any definition their charter likely used. There was a pause before the reply, longer than the translation lag should have needed. Then, understood, we're still coming down. I watched it descend through the spire's long window, the only window with intact glass left in the tower, the daylight coming through it amber and low, the way it always did this time of year, dust suspended in shafts, the way it had been every morning for 6 years, with no one but me to watch it. The ship was not large. It was old, in a way that read as deliberate, rather than neglected. Hull plating replaced in patches over decades, kept rather than retired. It came down slow, correcting for crosswind it likely didn't need to correct for, the caution of a crew that had learned what a quarantine world's air can hide. It set down on the terrace, where the 11 families used to argue about water rationing, engines cycling down to a low-ticking quiet, and it sat there a long time before anyone came out, as if even they understood there was a kind of arrival that shouldn't be rushed. 2 figures in sealed suits crossed first, and ran instruments over the soil without touching anything. Only after they signaled back did a 3rd figure come down the ramp unsealed, breathing the same air I'd been breathing for 6 years. The officer who finally crossed the terrace introduced herself as Calder, captain, and did not ask me to explain myself, and did not look at the dosage logs stacked against the spire's far wall, the way I'd braced for her to look at them, like evidence, like a tragedy she needed to confirm before she could file it. She looked at the dish instead, the old transmitter still aimed at coordinates 211 years stale, and she asked only one question. "Is it still broadcasting?" I told her it was. Every 9th night. She didn't tell me to stop. She didn't tell me it was pointless, though we both understood by then that it was, in the sense that mattered. There was no one left at the other end to receive it. She asked instead whether I wanted help recalibrating the dish so the burst would carry the dosage logs and the seed bank records too, not just the names, on the chance that someone, someday, on some other heading, caught the signal the way her ship had. I asked her why a patrol vessel would spend its fuel and its officers' time on a transmission that wasn't theirs to answer in the first place. She considered that for a moment, the way you consider a question you've been asked before and never settled. "We didn't answer your transmission," she said. "We answered the part where it kept going anyway. They stayed 11 days, long enough to recalibrate the dish, log the seed bank against 4 redundant archives instead of 1, and confirm, gently, without ever using the word, that there was no one else on Calvasa for them to find." Calder's engineers worked the way the best of the clinic staff once had, quietly, without asking me to narrate my own grief for their benefit, leaving me alone when the silence in the spire turned out to be a thing I still needed more than company. In the evenings, Calder sat with me on the terrace and asked about the 11 families, not the fever, and I found I could answer those questions in a way I hadn't been able to answer any question in 6 years. On the last morning, Calder asked if I wanted passage out, and I said not yet, and she didn't argue. She left 2 of her engineers behind for a season, and a relay buoy of their own design in the orbit above the spire, set to forward anything I transmitted to anyone who might be listening, mine or theirs or neither. She did not tell me it would find anyone. She did not tell me it wouldn't. She told me only that a signal worth 211 years of drifting was worth 1 more relay to carry it the rest of the way, however far the rest of the way turned out to be. I still send the elegy burst every 9th night. It carries Joran's name first, the way it always has, and then Sael's, and then the names of the 11 families in the order we used to call the water roll. But it carries the buoy's signature now too, so that whoever eventually answers, whenever that is, however long the drift takes, whatever they were listening for when they weren't listening for me, will know, before they ever cross the terrace, that the silence they're investigating already broke once, and that someone came anyway, for no better reason than that it kept going.